So the other day, I was on Instagram and I was watching somebody's stories, and there was this little calf, these images, a video of these calves. I don't know if they were dairy calves or just calves from the beef, in quotes, industry. And they'd been, as usual, this is a normal thing in any industry like that, the calves were taken away from their mother and they're fed this artificial milk. And this, of course, is something I'm aware of, and it's the dairy industry. I mean, the veal industry is actually just associated with the dairy industry. They take the babies away from their mothers, and they often kill them, the male calves, because they're no benefit to the dairy industry. And they all, if they want to keep them for a while to grow them up to make them, suitable for killing, sometimes they kill them straight away, and they'll be dragged along the slaughterhouse floors, sucking the fingers of the slaughterhouse workers. It's just terrible. Or they are kept a little while and fattened up, and then they're killed. This is a normal kind of runnings of the dairy industry. And I saw this video of these calves, and the wind was howling. I'm going to show you it. It's not graphic for a vegan or anybody who has any kind of semblance of care for sentient beings and thinks that animals morally matter would hopefully find this disturbing. But this is normal. This is something I want to emphasize to people. What you're going to see is how we treat animals in industry. And it's not that industrialized farming is worse than mom and pop farms. It's all awful. It's all abusive, like that saying, there's no such thing as non-abusive use of animals. So here are these little calves. I don't know how old they are. They look like they might be, maybe a month old, something like that, but I might be wrong. And they're sucking the bottles full of artificial milk instead of being able to suck their own mother's milk, like any species should be able to do. We've robbed them of that, and we've taken them from their mother, which is a tremendously traumatic event in itself, where the mother is crying and bereaved. They're grieving for days. If you've ever seen a mother separated from their calf, they're frantic, absolutely frantic. And I've seen it myself a few times now. The mother is crying and frantic, trying to get in the way of somebody trying to take their child away, just as it would be with humans. I mean, remember Sophie's Choice, if you've seen that movie with Meryl Streep. She was faced with having to give up one child and keep another one. They gave her a choice. It's an impossible choice. And I remember everybody thinking that movie was grueling. And it is grueling. The whole movie was grueling, but that particular instance of her having to choose which child to keep and which one they were going to take away, it was a dreadful scene. Well, this happens every single day all over the world to animals, not just cows, to all kinds of animals, and that we use for food, clothing, entertainment, and other reasons. It's normal. And that is, it's normal, and yet it is bizarre, it is wrong, and it is monstrous. It's a monstrous thing that we are doing to these sentient animals. Monstrous and unnecessary. So back to this scene, I don't know where it was, where these calves they're in their separate stalls, and they're being fed this artificial milk, and they're sucking away furiously, and the wind is howling through this facility, and they literally have shards of ice hanging off their faces. I mean, that's how cold it is. This is a young animal who is being separated from their mother. There are other young animals that are also stressed out and distressed, in this facility, all with their separate little stalls, and they're all drinking this milk, which is not their mother's milk, and they've been separated from their mother. Who knows where their mother is? They might be have been killed, a dairy cow, or they're eventually killed for their flesh. But that's the tremendous, just seeing these calves sort of with this wind howling around. I mean, they should be with their mother. And they've got ice hanging off their faces. It's freezing. And this is seen as acceptable. There was somebody you could see right at the end who was obviously giving them these bottles. How do they feel? They're just a worker there. How do they feel seeing that? How do people feel when they're down when they're working at the slaughterhouse all day, 8 hours a day, killing, blood everywhere, screaming, terrified animals? How do they feel too? It is a tragedy all round. How do they feel, the workers, when they're having to separate mothers from their calves or other animals from their young and then killing them? And some are okay with that because they've suffocated their humanity in a way so that they can do this to make money. But it's not normal, and it's also immoral. And it's strange that this continues on day after day, and we try not to think about it, or we purposefully pretend it's not happening, as if these animal products just appear on our plates and they come from bloodless packages in the supermarket shelves. Or we kind of console ourselves with, well, this steak came from a grass-fed cow. They had a nice life, so I feel okay about that. Or this piece of chicken came from a free-range, in quotes, chicken. And free-range is industrialized most of the time anyway. So we try and soothe our conscience with this whole animal welfare thing. Oh, look, it's got a rating number 5 on this packet of animal welfare. That means it's very good and those animals lived a happy life. What does that mean, happy? I mean, what does that mean? When we use a sentient animal, or anybody, as property, as slaves, what kind of life really is that? And with the motivation of killing them in the end. And we mutilate them on the way. We castrate animals without anesthetic. We cut off their beaks without anesthetic. We do all sorts of horrific things to animals. And let's not get started about animals that are in and about in nature, and we're trapping, drowning, and wounding them so they die a slow death because they weren't killed outright, or we just assassinate them in the forest or whatever. For entertainment, really. People like to say, oh, but I don't buy animal products from the stores. I kill the animals that I eat, as if that's better. People seem to take great pride in that. I'm not sure why. I see it as incredibly cowardly. The whole thing is cowardly, whether we're getting somebody else to do it or we're doing it ourselves. There's nothing about it that is fair or justifiable, particularly when we do not need animal products at all to survive. We can easily meet all our nutrition requirements from plants and other non-animal sources. So if that's the case, that we don't need these animal products at all to survive, then what are we doing? We're doing it because we can. It's a might makes right kind of situation. We can get away with it. Nobody's going to stop us because animals are viewed as property on this planet at this point. So we think, well, I can keep doing this until other people stop doing it, and then maybe I might. The animals aren't going to be able to stop me, are they? They can't form unions, and they can't go around with guns shooting people and having some kind of revolution. So it's up to us. It's up to you and I to first go vegan and then educate others to go vegan, because this, for want of a better word, insanity, it has to stop. And, you know, when I accidentally saw those calves in this facility. I was just flicking through the stories on Instagram. I'm no longer on Facebook. And it was really shocking, because normally I don't see things like that in my feed. And I don't like to see things like that in my feed. I have a vivid imagination. I've also seen enough. I don't need to see any more. But I thought, well, seeing that I saw this, I would share this with you. And the response to this, I hope, is not, oh no, we shouldn't do that to these animals. We should find nicer ways to use them, better ways to use them. You know, little calves shouldn't be treated like that. We shouldn't be doing that. We should find nicer ways. That's not the response to this, because this is normal, and what is applied and seen as animal welfare would be considered torture if it was applied to humans. So we need to release ourselves and disabuse ourselves from this notion that there's such a thing as good ways and morally acceptable ways to use animals, because there isn't. Even if we were the nicest we could be, and you see there's so many false narratives out here because the farmers are aware that people are becoming more aware of what we're doing to animals, so they try and feed us stories and make it all sound like it's, they love their animals. You know, you often hear that. Oh, I love my animals. How can you say that I'm mistreating them? I love them. I often hear that, particularly around here in Tasmania, where there is a lot of farming on fields, which is seen now as fairly unusual, because most animals are in feedlots and fed grain, which they shouldn't be eating, and all of that. A huge amount of grain is fed to animals. But a lot of people, you know, that have farms here say, oh, I love my animals. I don't know, it's weird. But that's speciesism, isn't it? It gives this kind of it blocks you from actually seeing the animal as an individual. It blocks that ability to see that they are individuals who have rights. Even if society doesn't say they have rights legally, they have rights simply because they're sentient. I mean, there's been times where human slavery has been completely acceptable, and there was enormous efforts to prevent the abolition of those of slavery. There was huge efforts to stop that to get rid of slavery. Huge efforts to prevent the end of slavery, of human slavery. And human slavery still exists today. It's not particularly legal, but it still exists. But humans are seen as moral persons, whereas non-human animals are not seen as persons. And that simply means they are not viewed as a thing. But they are moral persons, each and every non-human animal. All the animals that are on our plates and on our backs and what we wear and use, they are all individually moral persons who deserve the right not to be used as property. So we need to put aside all our preconceived ideas about non-human animals, all of them, and then go from there. Start seeing them as the sentient beings they are. Just like we love life, they love life too, and do not want to die. They don't want to be treated like things. They don't want to be raised for their flesh or for their secretions or for their fur or their wool, all of that. They do not. They want to enjoy this planet just like we do. And they certainly don't want one species to destroy the entire planet so that they all end up going extinct. And that's what we're doing too. And a lot of that is due to our consumption of animal products. Read that largest study to date by Dr. Poor in the UK, where the conclusion was the single biggest thing we can do is to adopt a plant-based diet, a diet free of dairy, eggs, fish, and meat. And that will make a tremendous difference to the climate catastrophe that's coming. So, and one more thing, I saw on a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode where Larry David thought that one of the dishes was dog meat. It's kind of a racist thing, really, if you watch the thing, but because there was a Korean person involved in it, and then he freaked out, and then he ran around and he was telling everybody to stop eating the dog meat, and they're all and trying to get it out of their mouth, and they're all screaming and running around. And the odd thing about this is this is an example of how we moral compartmentalize. We consider dogs more morally important than other animals, even though they're sentient just like all the animals that we're torturing and killing by the trillions every year. There's no difference between the sentience of a dog and the sentience of a cow or a fish or a pig or a hen. And that's why that's particularly funny and sad, because everybody's freaking out because they think they're eating dog meat. So we have these, it just shows that we do think animals morally matter, and the only difference is we haven't had any sort of personal relationship with a pig or any of those other animals that we see as food, but we have had relationships with dogs, and we see that they're clearly sentient, and so we somehow think that they're more morally important than the animals that we're using and that we're eating. We have to do a lot of mental gymnastics to be able to make this sound sensible in our mind. But most of the time we just shove it out of the way because we want to keep on with their few minutes of palate pleasure. And if we can get away with it for as long as we can, great. Anyway, I hope that when you see this, or if you've already watched it, if I've already slipped it in here, the calves and how tragic that is. And this is just normal. This sort of awfulness happens every single day. Every single minute, every single second. Every single second. There's torturing and killing of animals. Thousands every second. How can we have any peace on this planet while that's going on? How can we? It's not possible. Even if all the human violence stopped, if we still have this torturing and killing every day going on the planet, we're never going to have peace on the planet. Humans are always going to be killing and harming one another and doing all sorts of awful things, because at the center of what we're doing in our daily lives involves tremendous violence towards other animals. And it doesn't matter if they're like us or not like us. If fish don't show emotions like us, it's absolutely irrelevant. They're sentient, and that's all that matters. And let's not also forget, let's try and do our best not to harm insects too. I know that's incredibly difficult. They're so small, and it's really, really difficult, but let's try. Let's try not to harm insects. It's obvious they love life too. They're always trying to get away from harm. So I'm going to talk about insects in another video, because I think that's an important thing too. If we can care about the smallest animal, and we don't want to harm them, if we can live our life like that, then that has to affect all of our life as well as other people's lives. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. My name's Trish Roberts. Please check out my vegan resource and podcast forum, howtogovegan.org. Please go vegan. Even if we can't stop harming one another, that's humans with the wars and all of this, the constant warring because of capitalism. Capitalism is so closely aligned with imperialism. If we can't stop that, we can at least take control of what we're doing in our daily lives, and it's up to you and I to be vegan and then influence others to become vegan. So till next time, bye for now.